All right, let's dive into something I think pretty much everyone has felt at some point. It's that frustrating internal tug of war, the one between the person we want to be and the habits that just seem to keep winning. Man, this quote from a Reddit user just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly captures that feeling of being at war with yourself. You have the plan, you know what you're supposed to do, but then it feels like this other person grabs the steering wheel and drives you right into a ditch of procrastination and self-doubt. So that's the big question, right? Why is this internal battle so common? And, way more importantly, how do we actually stop this cycle? We're going to unpack that today and look at some real, concrete ways to get both of those people inside of us to finally start working together. So, our journey starts where the problem usually does, right between our ears. It can feel like being stuck in a thought prison, and it's here, in our own minds, that the whole cycle of self-sabotage often kicks off. This is what's known as the anxiety loop. And you have to understand, your brain isn't trying to be mean, it genuinely thinks it's helping by trying to solve a potential problem. But it's kind of like being stuck in quicksand. Your instinct is to struggle and thrash around, but that just makes you sink faster. And the really brutal irony here, most of the horrible things we spend hours worrying about never, ever happen. Okay, so if our brains are wired for survival, you gotta wonder, why do they get caught in these super destructive loops? Let's peel back the layers and look at the actual psychological mechanics behind this whole struggle. And that brings us to a really important clinical concept: emotional dysregulation. Now, this isn't just a fancy term. It's a way of saying that this is not a character flaw. It's not you being weak. It is a recognized pattern of really intense, long-lasting emotional reactions. And it can be linked to all sorts of things, from your childhood experiences to even a brain injury. The main thing to get here is that this is a real, definable challenge. It's not just you being too sensitive. You know, this struggle really comes in two main flavors. You've got overthinking, which is all about the future. It's that endless, exhausting what-if game. And then you've got its cousin, rumination, which is being trapped in the past, replaying every mistake on a loop with that classic line, "if only I had." One's about worrying about the road ahead, the other's about being obsessed with a pothole you already hit. And these are the cognitive errors that basically just pour gasoline on the fire. You've got catastrophizing. That's when a tiny typo in an email becomes, "I'm definitely getting fired." Then there's all or nothing thinking. "I skipped the gym once, so my entire health plan is a total failure." And of course, overgeneralizing. One bad date makes you think, well, that's it. I'm going to be alone forever. Sound familiar at all? And get this. This isn't just some abstract idea. It is physically changing your brain. Every single time you let those negative thoughts run wild, you are strengthening those neural pathways. You've probably heard that saying, neurons that fire together wire together. Well, you're literally training your brain to get better and faster at worrying, all while marinating it in the stress hormone cortisol. Okay, so let's connect the dots here. How does this whole internal world of anxiety and overthinking actually translate into our actions? Or, our inaction? Well, this is where self-sabotage makes its grand entrance. Now listen, this is a massive reframe, and it's super important. Self-sabotage is not about being lazy. It's actually a twisted, unconscious attempt to protect yourself. See, your brain figures it's better to fail because you didn't try, something you can control, than to give it your all and still fall short. That procrastination, it's really just a tactic to avoid the anxiety of the task itself. And this stuff shows up everywhere. Putting off that huge project, picking a fight with your partner right when things are going great, using food or a drink to numb out your feelings. All of these are just different behaviors driven by the same thing, an attempt to manage overwhelming emotions, even if the solution just makes things worse in the long run. I absolutely love this metaphor because it just nails the internal struggle. You've got the writer, that's your logical, rational mind. The writer knows you should go to the gym, and it's got a whole PowerPoint presentation on why. But then you've got the elephant, your emotional, habitual self. The elephant is massive, powerful, and honestly, it just wants to stay on the couch. And here's the key. The tiny writer can't win a fight with the giant elephant. It has to learn how to guide it. So, how do we train the writer? How do we learn to guide that elephant? This brings us to the most important part of our whole discussion today, a practical toolkit for taking back the reins and actually steering your life where you want it to go. The foundation for these tools comes from an approach called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. The core idea is actually super simple but so powerful. We can change how we feel and what we do by changing how we think. The techniques we're about to go through are all based on this principle. Okay, this first one is a total game changer. It's called thought containment. Instead of letting your worries run your whole day, you give them a specific appointment. So when a worry pops up at 10 in the morning, you just write it down and tell your brain, hey, thanks for the heads up. We'll deal with this at 4 p.m. during our worry time. This gives your brain that sense of control it's craving without letting the anxiety completely take over your life. Now, what if you're right in the middle of a full-blown anxiety spiral? You need what's called a pattern interrupt, and this technique is perfect for that. It yanks you out of your head and plants you firmly back in your body. By forcing yourself to focus on your senses, what you can see, touch, hear, you're basically hitting a reset button on your brain. You're breaking the loop and reconnecting to the present moment. So, those are your emergency tools. But what about the long game? Building a resilient mindset. Journaling with something like the 5 Whys helps you really understand your fears instead of just being scared by them. Self-compassion is about treating yourself like you would a good friend. Starting small builds momentum. And mindfulness, that's the practice of learning to just watch your thoughts float by without having to grab on to every single one. You become the observer, not the prisoner. And really, this might be the most important takeaway of all. This whole journey isn't about trying to become some emotionless robot who never feels sad or anxious. That's impossible. The goal is to change your relationship with those feelings. It's about building the skill to see a thought, feel an emotion, and then consciously choose how you're going to respond, instead of just getting swept away by the current every single time. And we'll end on this powerful thought. Letting go of these old, painful patterns, well, it can actually feel like losing a part of yourself, even if it's a part you don't like. It's uncomfortable. But on the other side of that discomfort is a whole new kind of freedom, one where you're not at war with yourself anymore, one where you are finally, truly in the driver's seat.